Hi, I'm James.
And I'm Antony.
And this is Words and Numbers.
Brought to you by the good people at CACI, the Center for American Culture and Ideas. Ant, what is new and exciting in your world this week?
This isn't exactly new, and I wouldn't call it exciting. It's actually somewhat depressing.
So we're right back to where we always are.
Right, yeah. This news came out a couple of weeks ago. Oregon has, or had up until COVID, a requirement that high school graduates, I'm quoting here, read and comprehend a variety of text, write clearly and accurately, and apply mathematics in a variety of settings. This was a requirement. Students had to demonstrate these skills at moderate or above level to graduate from an Oregon high school.
What you're saying is they had some kind of minimal standards for graduation.
They did.
And notice my use of the past tense here. I'm just guessing where this is going.
Yeah, you're going to get to double down on the use of the past tense. The requirements were suspended during COVID. I've talked about this, I think you have as well, a number of times, that we see this in the college classroom now. Kids who are currently sophomores, juniors, were in high school at the time of the COVID lockdowns. Everyone's doing remote. They don't come close to having the skills that high school students had before them. But nonetheless, that's a COVID thing. Here's what's somewhat new and somewhat depressing. Last month, Oregon State Board of Education voted unanimously to extend this suspension through next year? No. The year after? No. Extend the extension through the 2027-28 school year.
Let's never have standards again.
Yeah, and it really makes me nervous. There's going to come a point, maybe 30 years down the road, when serious parts of our infrastructure just start falling apart, or our medical doctors just can't seem to keep people alive anymore, or whatever it is. And people are going to be scratching their heads wondering what's going on here.
Antony, you are dangerously close to Randianism.
I don't know what that is, but I'm very disturbed.
The followers of Ayn Rand, the Randians, you are becoming, this is the kind of thing that Ayn Rand used to say, right? That one day the planes would just fall from the sky and that would just be how it is.
Yeah, but it's one thing to say that kind of in theory. It's another to say it having pointed to the erosion and, in this case, liquidation of standards, and to see firsthand the effect in the college classroom. Oh, and by the way, how are we handling this in the college classroom? You would think, well, the students can't handle, whatever it is they need to handle, so you fail them. No, we're passing them. They're going to move right on through. They're going to get to graduate school, and they're going to get passed through again.
I don't know if I've ever said this before. I think it's my prediction now that one day soon, PhDs will be as common as bachelor's degrees are now.
Oh, I'm sure, because bachelor's degrees now are as common as high school diplomas were once upon a time.
You're just going to see a bunch of diploma factories selling these things, and you already see it. There are a number of people, and they're always the ones who demand you call them doctor. I give you Dr. Joe Biden, people like this. The screechier the demand, the likelier it is that the PhD is worthless. I've got something that's a lot more fun, because the Supreme Court is about to hear a case about the United States tax code. It's called Moore versus United States, and it challenges a piece of a 2017 law, ... right, et cetera, et cetera. Everybody just kind of, their eyes all glaze over, as well they should. But here's the thing. It might be the case that up to a third of the United States tax code could be scrapped because of what the Supreme Court decides, because they're going to get to decide what income is.
Did you say this is the Moore case? Moore versus something or other. Yeah.
Versus United States.
Yeah, and people are losing their minds because it's something the conservatives want, and the Supreme Court is majority conservative at the moment.
That is absolutely correct. And everybody's all worked up now because the tax code might have to be scrapped. And I say scrap the thing. Let's just get rid of it. Let's take the opportunity to declare a flat tax and just be done with it.
I'm very interested in having an expert on to talk about this, because I can't imagine them making a decision that's going to require scrapping a third of the tax code. That's a gargantuan amount of legislation, and it's going to have ripple effects all over the place.
That's all well and good what you just said, and years ago I might have agreed with you that, yes, the Supreme Court highly unlikely to delve into this nonsense, but this is the same Supreme Court that said, oh, Roe versus Wade, yeah, no, not anymore.
That's true. But here's the danger on the other side. If the Supreme Court comes down the opposite direction, in effect giving the federal government the ability to tax wealth, the middle class better hang on to its wallets, because the major source of wealth accumulation amongst the middle class is the equity in one's home. Well, all of a sudden, that's going to be subject to taxation.
I don't think that a wealth tax could pass muster. I can't even imagine the mental gymnastics that would be necessary to get that front and center.
Mm-hmm.
But boy, I've seen the Supreme Court do all kinds of things over the years that are clearly unconstitutional. So,
Is it possible that the Supreme Court will punt and come down with a decision that is extremely narrow, applying only in this one particular case and can't be generalized one way or the other anywhere else?
No, because the minute these people, the Moores, are made whole, they're suing for like $17,000 or some such amount. Every other business that was taxed in the same way would then have the exact same suit. There would be no way to say you and only you.
Yeah.
There's nothing that differentiates these people from all the other businesses that got hosed in this form of taxation. What is income anyway? You know what? It's not defined in the amendment that gave us the income tax.
Well, I guess not, but it's not something, at least within the confines of economics and finance, and I guess accounting as well, it's not something that's ambiguous. It's very clear. There's income, there's wealth.
Any idiot knows what income is, and yet it's not defined, so you know what's going to happen. Politicians decide they can tax all kinds of things, like unrealized gains. Well, that's not income. That's not income at all. How the are we taxing that? Well, that's the question the Moores want to ask, and they would like to have an answer, and they want their $17,000 back, and I don't blame them, not for 1 second.
$17,000. All of this, a third of the U.S. tax code turning on that little amount of money.
Well, every now and then it is actually the principle of the thing that matters.
This is actually at the Supreme Court?
This goes to argument in 2 days, I believe.
Oh my God, this is great. I'd love to hear that.
By the time people listen to us say these words, it's already going to be in process.
Oh, that's superb. We've got to do an episode on that topic.
Yeah, we'll pay attention. But, Ant, this brings us, of course, to the foolishness of the week. And this foolishness of the week is so foolish that not only will it be the foolishness of the week, it will be next week's main episode, because we can't just let it go, right? This is so dumb that we can't just talk about it for half a second. Anybody who's been paying attention this week knows it's Joe Biden. And he's back at it again on Twitter. He says, look, I think you should be able to be a billionaire if you can earn it, but here it is, just pay your fair share. I think you ought to pay a minimum tax of 25%. It's about basic fairness.
I bet the billionaires would be very happy to pay a 25%, because according to the Congressional Budget Office, they're currently paying 30%.
There is that, isn't there? But Biden is convinced and tweeted that they pay 3%.
What? Oh, that me off so much. I cannot tell you. He's quoting those numbers from, I don't know who came up with them first, but they got popularized by Vox. They calculated total tax paid divided by wealth and came up with that 3% figure. That's not how you calculate income tax. It's tax divided by income. Now, if you want to do tax divided by wealth and talk about it, that's fine, but you can't compare that to the 10%, 20% rate that the middle class is paying, because the middle class calculation is the other one, taxes divided by income. You got to use the same metric both cases.
But of course they're not going to do that. Come on, man.
At what point are you pulling the wool over the voters' eyes so badly that it's obvious to a lot of them that that's what's going on? I don't know, because I'm too close to the numbers to have any sense of what the average person thinks these numbers actually are.
Well, I don't think the average person has any idea. And why would the average person have any idea? Who cares? I mean, do you think anybody should really care?
Well, I mean, if you're going to start saying things like people aren't paying their fair share, it would seem prudent to know what they're actually paying.
But politicians are always going to say that. And here's the thing. Politicians are never going to define what a fair share is. Now, Biden, God bless him, just did 25%. That's their fair share. I don't know a billionaire in the world who wouldn't say, okay, I'll take that.
Yeah, well, I think he just stepped in it, because what's going to happen is people are going to start pointing to Congressional Budget Office numbers saying, well, but they're already paying this plus more. Maybe they need a tax break.
It is kind of ridiculous, isn't it? There's actually another tweet as well, and here's the one that's, I think, really going to drive you crazy, and the one that will probably take the most of our attention next week. Allow me to read. A billionaire minimum tax of just 25% would raise $440 billion over the next 10 years. I don't know what magic math that is. There you go.
There's that.
It's magic
phrase.
math. Hang on, let me finish the
all right.
and then you could just go nuts. Imagine what we could do, says Joe Biden, if we just made billionaires pay their taxes like everyone else.
All right. The phrase, over the next 10 years, you hear this repeatedly from politicians because it enables them to state a very big number.
Well, in this case, it doesn't.
Well, yeah, 440 billion is not gargantuan. Well, over 10 years, that's 44 billion a year. The federal government spends almost 20 billion a day. So that's basically 2.5 days worth of spending right there. Right. So it's not a gargantuan amount of money we're talking about.
Now your math doesn't work out.
44 billion a year.
Oh, gotcha.
Yeah,
okay.
yeah.
And now your math does work out. Now I think the people see just how ridiculous this is, and I want to put a pin in it right there. Tune in next week for the full treatment.
For one-stop shopping for all things James and Ant, visit our website, wordsandnumbers.org. We give a special shout-out to our Patreon sponsors who help us keep the lights on. If you'd like to contribute, go to patreon.com/wordsandnumbers.
There is a mysterious pneumonia outbreak. Where? China. That sounds somehow familiar to me.
I think it's the same general area, but it's approximately the same time as the first COVID cases popped up in China. They popped up in mid-December of 2019.
Well, here we are again, and given my propensity to read you headlines, allow me to read you this one from the Times of India. Masks, social distancing, World Health Organization urges China to bring back COVID-like measures amid mystery pneumonia outbreak.
We're at this place that I warned about back when we were doing the whole mask thing. My warning was, if we keep pushing this mask thing, if indeed it is the case that it doesn't do any good, then next time something comes around that we actually really do need the masks, everyone's going to say, forget it. They pushed this last time and didn't mean anything.
Let's back up a little bit, because regular listeners will remember that I said, if my wearing a mask makes my fellow citizens feel better in a time filled with uncertainty and difficulty, okay, I'll wear a mask. Did I enjoy wearing a mask? I did not. Did I always try to find a way to get around wearing a mask? Yes, I absolutely did. But I said then that that was a pretty small price to pay to make everybody feel better. But I have a couple of 3 years now of information.
Damn it. James has called a timeout. He's left us. Why? Because he claimed he had information. Information means numbers. Numbers scare James. He's run away. This is often how James and I spend our time. I'm waiting, talking to an empty chair. James, oh James, here he is. Look at the James. I love the James. He pat his little head.
All right. Where were we?
You claimed you had information.
No, I did not. I claimed I had defective earbuds.
You said, I have information.
No, I said,
and
wait
then you
a minute.
ran away.
I have to,
It's
I
on
said
tape.
Time out, and I left. It is not on tape.
Before you said time out, you said, and I have information.
Oh, no, that's right.
So you did say you have information.
I did, but you didn't, as usual. You had no idea what the hell I was talking about. I have 3 years or so worth of information now, which bring me to understand that the COVID didn't exactly jump from person to person or surface to people or anything of the sort. The masks seem not to have helped at all. Social distancing might not have helped at all. And here we are, and I can see it coming a mile away. We're going to hear all the same people saying all the same things that they said 3 years ago. And they're going to say, well, just put a mask back on. It'll be all right. And they'll say, really, this time we mean it's just masks. And then they're going to say, well, and a little bit of social distancing wouldn't hurt. And, well, these businesses aren't really essential. And you could see it lining up on the road before us. And all the same people are going to say all the same things. And you know what? I don't care anymore. I'm not listening at all. I don't care if wearing a mask makes anybody feel better, because you know what makes me feel better? Not wearing a mask. And that's where we are, right? I'm not willing to concede, as you are, that this time it might be warranted.
Well, it's interesting you say that, because in reading these articles, I'm thinking about the psychology. And I'm going to tread lightly here, because I'm not saying that this is the major driver of what's going on, but I am saying it's there. I just don't know the magnitude of it. And here's what I'm talking about. Picture the human psychology of people, experts in the field, who during the age of COVID, in the media, politicians are calling on them saying, what do we do? What do we do? And they say things like social distancing, masks, or whatever, and the entire world behaves according to what they just said. That's a huge psychological boost. I'm not saying that that was their primary motivation. I'm just saying that it's going to happen. There is that psychological boost. And you come down from that, and now all of a sudden the phone's not ringing, politicians aren't quoting you, the media's not looking for you. Here's an opportunity. And again, I'm not saying that this is being done consciously, but I am claiming that there's this psychological effect of there's an opportunity here to, again, come out into the limelight, to be the expert and say, here's what we need to be doing. It's the problem anytime you give power to anybody, no matter how well-intentioned, that human beings like it. They like power, and they don't like it after the power's gone. They'll do anything they can to get it back.
I fully expect that they will pull all the same that they did last time.
But I don't think people are going to pay any attention. I really don't.
I'm not interested anymore. Mm-hmm. They blew it last time. They went way too far. They ruined people's lives. We pointed out that lives would be ruined by what they did. And the rejoinder was always the same. Yeah, but think of all the lives we'll save. Well, there's no evidence whatsoever to indicate that they saved near the number of lives that they ruined.
We had Brian McCallum on several episodes ago. Studies he has conducted indicate that the masks actually could have cost lives. And he wasn't speaking about whether the masks were efficacious. His argument was people would don the masks and get this sense that they were now somehow immune to COVID and would behave in risky ways that they wouldn't have behaved otherwise.
You know, it's the airbag anti-lock brake behavior that you get in cars.
Yeah, the more safety features you put on the car, the more dangerous people tend to drive.
All right, so what do we know? There's a mystery pneumonia outbreak. Well, that sounds ominous, doesn't it? But there are pneumonia outbreaks all the time, the same way that there are flu outbreaks all the time. And somehow we manage to live right through them.
Well, yeah, and, as you say that, I'm forgetting to cast blame appropriately. Who else benefited from all of this to-do about the masking and the social distancing and all of that? And
politicians.
The fear? Yes, politicians, but I was thinking the media. And the media is constantly on the lookout for what's the next thing that will attract people's eyeballs. And so the media is going to jump all over this thing. And I'm not saying that whatever's going on in China is or is not important. I am saying that regardless of the importance, the media is going to see an opportunity to get people afraid once again.
This will receive the exact same disproportionate coverage that random but minor acts of terrorism receive.
Yeah.
Why? Because it benefits the media if we're all terrified all the time.
And there's one group of people that are going to be very happy about this. This is a group of people that I sympathize with, the remote work crowd, saying, well, let's be safe. Let's all go back to working remotely.
Yeah, the people who have all just been told in the last month or two that this remote work thing isn't working out. We're going to have you back at the office all the time.
Yeah.
I think the days of full office work are behind us.
Yeah.
Now, I don't know what it means in the end. I don't know if that means that, we're going to have people working remote exclusively or what have you. But there's going to be a fair amount of remote work in our future, no matter what happens.
Yeah, I think so. And I think it's only going to grow as time goes on.
I suspect that's right. The thing I predicted at the time when remote work was becoming all the rage was that the one thing that was going to be lost was going to be corporate culture, right? When people don't have enough time to become acclimated to a place with a group of people, their behaviors will be different over time. And that's going to cause a problem down the road. And I think it did. We still haven't figured out how to address that fully. I think we will. That seems to me to be more of a technical question than an existential one.
You know, I'm having an interesting experience as I'm segueing into this new job. As an academic, pretty much you're a loner. You do your own thing. You might co-author with some people or work together like you and I do. And I think you and I work together more so than any two faculty members anywhere. Generally speaking, you teach your classes, that's just you. You do some research, and that's just you, maybe occasionally with somebody else. But basically, you work on your own. As I segue into this new job, I keep getting taken aback when someone says to me, oh, well, you don't have to do this particular thing. We've got people who do that. Just contact them. And I'm getting this feel for what it is to be part of a very large team of people, each with their own specialty. And I can offload a bunch of stuff that I would normally do on my own. But to pull that off requires knowing who those people are, building relationships with them. And that doesn't work remotely. But once it's built, the interactions can be remote. That's perfectly fine.
Yeah, you and I haven't been in the same room for a decade.
That's correct. Yes, we haven't.
As I think about it, that's probably for the best.
You and I were somewhere, I think in California, maybe a year ago. You had arrived at the hotel first, and I arrived second, and came knocked on your door and said, oh, what are we going to do? Go get some food or something. And we must have been talking for a couple of minutes before it hit me. I'm looking at you in the flesh, and I hadn't seen you in person for like 2 years prior to that.
Yeah.
But I see you every other day on Zoom, so it didn't register with me.
We've got different work and social realities at this point, but part of the different reality that we've got is defined by what happened in the last few years. And I'm frankly not interested in hearing it anymore. We were lied to over and over and over again, and people admitted it, and then people were caught in the middle of those lies. You know, Anthony Fauci, I think if he ever told the truth at all, it was an accident. Public records requests were made to get some of the things he was writing. And our friend Phil Magnus made these public record requests and caught him hip deep in lies every single time they found any documentation from anything at all. So what are the odds that I'm going to believe anybody about this stuff again?
It's really unfortunate because CDC for a long time was kind of like the bastion of rationality when it came to things medical. People trusted them. Not so much anymore.
Well, how could you now? They're the handmaidens of politicians.
Right.
And as long as that's true, if I don't trust politicians, and I don't, then I won't trust their handmaidens. Not now, not ever. They've caused, again, the very problem that they're going to set out to solve, and they won't solve it. Because the only way they'll say they can solve it is by getting more power for themselves.
So what do you think happens? I can see big cities, Los Angeles, New York, locally having crackdowns and saying social distancing and masks and all of that. Do you see a push from the political level nationwide for something like that? I can't imagine politicians would push for something knowing, and they'd have to know, that 95% of the people are going to ignore them.
Here's what I think is going to happen. I think you will see that push in cities. It'll make sense there too, right? Because where are you going to find a Chinese pneumonia first? West Coast, probably Los Angeles, probably San Francisco. Those places are so thoroughly indoctrinated by the left that they'll just do anything that they're told. When national politicians see it working in big cities,
right,
they'll think to themselves, oh yeah, we can do that again.
Yeah.
Not realizing that the entire American South, the Desert West, the Mountain West, not interested in the least.
Yep.
The Midwest, probably, for that matter. The vast majority of the land of the United States, not interested. Now, some of the high population areas will be. And I suspect that the federal politicians will make the same mistake they always do when they take the wrong lesson. They'll see exactly what they want to see, and they'll think, oh yeah, they'll do as we tell them. Of course they will. There's already a crisis of faith with government as it stands, and it's in no small part because of what happened during COVID. I gave them every benefit of every doubt, as I think most people did during COVID. They proved to me over and over again that that was a mistake and that I shouldn't have done it.
To the extent it plays out at all, it plays out in the cities, the big cities, and that's it. I don't see a national push. I cannot imagine politicians pushing for something that so clearly people outside the cities are not going to be interested in. Why display to 90% of the country that you have no authority?
They'll only do that if they realize they don't have that authority, and politicians rarely realize that until after it's too late. The first thing we would have to see are cases of this popping up in the U.S. Will that happen? I don't know. There seems to be a new respiratory disease in China every year. We don't see most of them.
But this thing about a new respiratory disease every year, that itself is not a new thing. These diseases are constantly evolving to get past whatever the latest defenses are we put up. This is why we have these annual flu shots, because the things mutate.
And it's why the annual flu shot is ineffective a good deal of the time, right? Because the flu shot doesn't include every possibility of every flu.
Right.
It includes scientists' best guesses as to which flu is going to hit. And they're not always right about that. And that's all the time we've got this week on Words and Numbers. Until next time, be sure to follow us on Twitter. Handles are in the show notes. Join Words and Numbers Backstage, the Facebook group where the conversation continues, and
send us email, wordsandnumberspodcast@gmail.com.
Until next week, try to be nice to one person who doesn't deserve it. Just one. And who knows, it may turn into a trend. Give it a shot. You might feel good about yourself.
You could say you tried.
You tried, that's right. Till next week, can't take it easy.
See you next week, James.